We are facing a lot of complex challenges these days, but sometimes the answers can be surprisingly simple. Simplicity often has the benefit of being more widely affordable too. Hello and welcome to a new edition of EcoAfrica. I am Chris Elems in Lagos, Nigeria. Great to have you with us. Here's what's coming up. Pencils that are saving trees in Serbia. Providing clean drinking water in Cameroon. How indigenous medicine is helping farmers in Ghana. And supporting flood victims in Nigeria. Here, flooding is an increasing severe problem, and Lagos, as well as nearby Lagos states, are among places hard hit. Our reporter went to find out more about the causes of the problem and what can be done to help.
During rainy season, this is a common sight in Lagos. Even with just moderate rainfall, streets often get flooded quickly. In Lagos, water is never far away. The city and the state are located on the coast surrounding a lagoon which several rivers flow into. In recent years, many residents have had to leave their homes due to flash flooding, like here in this neighborhood in Ikorodu in the north of Lagos State.
Since 2019, every year after that, we've been experiencing flood. I am still here because this is my house. That's why I'm here. So those who do not have the means to, protect their house, had to leave.
Authorities say that the houses in the flooded areas were built without necessary permits. It is not the government's responsibility, they say, to warn residents of the dangers.
As a state, we will not deal with illegal or those people that build their houses where they are not supposed to build their houses. Those people that does not have permission. No government parastatals will give you a permission to build a house in such a place that is prone to flood.
But flooding is occurring more regularly even in those areas with legally built houses. A key reason is, of course, Lagos's tropical climate. Heavy downpours are not uncommon during the rainy season. But in the past few decades, weather patterns here have changed. Rainfall has become less frequent but far heavier as a result of climate change. Here, temperatures in the atmosphere absorb more moisture, which leads to more intense precipitation. On top of this, Lagos City has expanded massively over the past century on flood-prone marshlands and floodplains. Lagos's coastline and waterfronts have been dramatically transformed since colonial times, making the problem worse.
There's been rapid urbanization developments in Lagos State. As you know, it's a very small state, less than 2,000 square meters, but it has over 20 million people. And you know what that means for development. So every space, people just want to find a way to build their houses. And it does not help that we do not have the vertical style of building. We still build very horizontally, so we take up all the spaces and leave little or no space for drainages or for natural absorption of water.
So when it rains in Lagos, the water cannot be properly drained from the streets. Drains are often poorly built and blocked by rubbish, which is all too often dumped on the streets. In early 2024, the Lagos state government introduced a ban on single-use plastics like styrofoam packaging to tackle the problem. There has been more improvement, but the problem still persists. That is why this NGO is taking things into their own hands.
Most of the thing they drink, they will just throw it on the floor. Our activities now is to make sure that this doesn't get into our drainages, this doesn't get into our canals, so that it doesn't get into our creeks and it doesn't get on our beaches. So we're starting from educating people, we're starting from reorientating people and sensitizing them that this is a possible resource for you. This is value if channeled to our recycling streams in Lagos, so that it will not be in the drainage.
Raising awareness is as important as warning people when there is a threat of flooding that requires adequate monitoring and warning systems. This is still a work in progress.
We have systems where we monitor the river, the level of river. So we do have a couple of them around the city, though I will quickly agree that they are not enough.
Lagos is projected to be the world's biggest city by the end of the century, and large parts of its metropolitan area are at risk of flooding. More than half of residents are believed to live within 500 meters of the coast or the lagoon. How is Lagos trying to cope with this special geographical setting? EcoAfrica is an area on the city's coastline that was reclaimed from the Atlantic Ocean. It was intended to become Africa's Dubai, but construction is stalling. For years, the area has been a ghost town with just a few high-rise buildings aimed at the wealthy. To protect EcoAfrica residents from erosion and storm floods is the Great Wall of Lagos, but experts say it will shift erosion to low-income coastal areas. And aside from erosion, climate change is an ever-present threat for all Lagosians. Take, for example, Makoko, situated on the Lagos Lagoon, an informal settlement built partly on stilts. Those houses are less affected by temporary rises in water levels, but storms, flash floods and rising sea levels still threaten the residents' already precarious livelihoods. To prevent further disasters like the one in Ikorodu in the North Lagos state, change is needed. Unclogging gutters is only a small, first step. Developers need to allow for wetlands areas in the city. And of course, above all, the international community needs to urgently curb global warming.
To Europe now, where a Serbian couple have rewritten their careers by launching a business that produces eco-friendly pencils. Here is this week's Doing Your Bits.
These old newspapers are getting a second life as colour pencils. It's a simple but effective process. Serbian entrepreneur Slavica Markovic spent a long time perfecting the product. She even gave up her career to start a company with her husband Dragan. Our company has several missions. Our first mission is to make environmentally friendly products. But beyond that, our second mission is to educate young people. Because we don't just want children to buy and use our pencils, we want them to learn about eco-friendly practices through using them. The machines the Markovics use for production were designed by the couple themselves. The pencils are rolled in eco-friendly flour-based glue. To save energy, they don't use ovens. Instead, they leave the pencils to air dry for 2 days. Turning newspapers into pencils isn't a new idea, though. In fact, Africa was ahead of the game. A company in Kenya has been making pencils from newspapers for years. Recycling saves trees. To produce just 1 ton of paper, 24 trees are cut down. In Serbia, the Markovics process 4 to 5 tons of newspaper a year, producing around 3,000 pencils a day. In just a few years, their eco-friendly pencils save the equivalent of a small forest. Our packaging tells buyers who we are. On the back of our boxes, we explain that our pencils are fully recycled. No new trees were cut down to make them. Our manufacturing process is energy efficient, and our pencils are safe to use.
Livestock farming also takes its toll on trees as land is cleared for grazing or to cultivate animal feed. And meat production contributes to greenhouse gas emissions in other ways. Now, cattle, for example, emit large quantities of climate-damaging methane. But there is another climate-friendlier solution in the horizon.
Creamy camembert that hasn't used milk from a cow, slaughter-free steaks, and chicken breasts grown from cells.
Changing food is always like multi-layered in a sense because it's so deeply ingrained in our culture and who we are.
Some countries and US states have even preemptively banned it, concerned it could phase out traditional agriculture. But that's kind of the point. The livestock industry accounts for a fairly large share of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Lab-grown products could put us on the road to redemption, but how are they made, and when will they actually hit our supermarket shelves? There is cultured meat grown from animal cells. The Israeli firm Aleph Farms say their beef steaks are close to being rolled out.
Yes, our product is ready to go. The quality and level of sensory properties, mainly taste, flavor, and texture, is very high.
This place, Formo, is as modern and trendy as you'd expect from a Berlin startup.
Formo has focused on creating proteins which mimic whey and use that in a traditional cheese-making process. The taste test is coming up, but first let's dive into why this quest to find alternatives exists in the first place. Just how much the livestock industry contributes to climate warming greenhouse gases depends on who you ask. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization's most recent report cited 12%, but other studies suggest figures as high as 20%. Whatever the number, climate scientists consider methane emissions particularly concerning. They can be 80 times more harmful in terms of heating the atmosphere than CO2. And livestock accounts for about 30% of the world's methane emissions, largely through cow burps. Deforestation, land and water use, and livestock feed are also major concerns.
It makes more sense to produce plants and eat it directly than to feed it to animals.
An early study by Oxford University in 2011 reported cultivated meat could produce up to 96% fewer greenhouse gas emissions than livestock, thanks to using less land, water, and feed. But the numbers here are also contested. Some studies claim cultivated meat and dairy will need to be run on renewable energy sources if they are to retain lower emissions. To come closer to actual dairy, Formo uses what's called precision fermentation, the evolution of a process dating back thousands of years. They take koji, a type of fungi which is used a lot in Japanese cuisine, feed and ferment it to create a protein similar to whey, and then turn it into cheese. The company also plans on using an animal-free casein protein, but that first needs EU approval.
A product like cheese, where it is already a processed product when you start with milk, that there is a fermentation process already involved in the regular production of the product. There, I think it's easier to say, hey, there's just another fermentation step before that, to kind of get people to convert in that sense.
Maybe we should just dig straight in and see.
Let's do it. We have a Greek feta cheese.
So this one, I'd say the texture is a little bit still like away from like what you would expect from the feta.
Yeah.
But the taste, like the saltiness and everything, it's really there.
Rafa says it will initially be 10 to 20% more expensive than mid-range cheese. So we're still talking luxury prices for most people, but it's not outrageously expensive either. And Rafa claims Formo's cheese will eventually sell for cheaper than traditional dairy.
Fermentation is just more efficient with resources than animals. Much more efficient, actually. The question of the cost and the price pretty much is only a factor of scale.
All right, that's the cheese. But what about that highly sought-after steak? There are quite a few companies out there working on cultured meat, from beef to chicken to fish to foie gras. Aleph Farms is just one of a handful that already have approval to sell their lab-grown meat, in their case, in Israel. The company said they will roll out within the next year, but admitted it will be a luxury item to begin with, sold in high-end restaurants at a price similar to premium range beef.
It might take 10 years to get to the mainstream market. It won't happen overnight, just because it takes time to build production capacity, to drive the costs down, to build a supply chain.
Studies show customers are still skeptical about how this alternative meat is made. Aleph Farms say they are following the same basic principles of fermentation, only they start with animal cells, feed and nurture them in a bioreactor until they replicate only the edible part of animals.
We do eat animal cells when we eat meat products. So it's the same cells, the same ancient time-honored cell cultivation technique, and we just merge the two to make a new combination. The cells we use are not genetically engineered.
Italy's parliament moved to ban the production, sale or import of cultivated meat and animal feed in 2023. The US states of Florida and Alabama followed suit with their own bans in 2024.
I love that they banned it because that shows it's real. Why would you ban something that you don't believe is going to become relevant in the marketplace? So it's also a great signal, I think, that says like, damn, big meat is really concerned with this. The farming lobby is really concerned about that.
The reasoning from politicians is that traditional agriculture has to be protected.
We're speaking with the traditional dairy and farming industry to grow proteins in a fermentation tank and to produce these products. You need nutrients. Nutrients are coming from our fields. So you will always have, traditional farming as you know it.
The market for these animal-free alternatives is still very small, but if they can convince consumers' taste buds and bank balances, more people may jump on board, which can only be good news for the world's climate.
I'd like to try it, but sometimes traditional approaches are just as effective as high-tech ones, and they're often easier and quicker to implement. In northern Ghana, animal breeders are drawing on indigenous knowledge to cure their sick animals with scientific backends.
Timbia Gabambil is deworming his herd today. The livestock farmer uses indigenous medicines and herbal remedies, all based on knowledge passed down to him by his grandparents. Here in Nakpasalugu in Ghana's Upper East region, animals are vulnerable to diseases like goat plague, livestock dysentery, and parasitical infections that cause stomach bloating.
They have worms in their stomach that are making them sick. So I have to get mahogany tree bark and mix that with other native herbs and give them several doses over 3 days. This mixture kills the worms.
This knowledge of the medicinal properties of plants and herbs is invaluable, both for the region's farmers and their herds, and for researchers. That's because Timbia Gabambil is part of a major interdisciplinary project to implement ethno-veterinary medicine in Ghana. At the Center for Plant Medicine Research in the town of Mampong Akuapem, not far from the capital Accra, scientists are investigating the healing properties of native plants. The government originally established the facility to provide alternative healthcare to local people. Now it's carrying out research into animal health. But the laboratory here has been studying the chemical and pharmaceutical properties of plants for some time now.
Our focus was to look out for what is the chemistry of these plants, what is the biological activities of these plants, and relate them with the diseases that these farmers or innovators claim to be treating with.
In Ghana, 10% of livestock succumb to disease. In a country with few trained veterinarians, farmers often rely on the advice of cattle herders and other locals who recommend medicines sold in open markets like this one. The unregulated misuse and overuse of antibiotics can lead to high levels of antibiotic residues in animal products, and it can encourage antibiotic resistance, which affects the health of both livestock and people who consume animal products. Meanwhile, 75% of livestock in Ghana are resistant to the antibiotics used to treat them. At the same time, many livestock owners don't trust herbal medicines, which aren't scientifically tested and don't come with a company leaflet and packaging.
Once we provide this information, where this project is aiming at, that would provide this evidence that these herbal medicines work against the diseases that we are studying. We would be able to prove that these medicines or innovations are good.
As a participant in the project, Timbia Gabambil no longer has to rely on the plants in the forest. The project gave him exclusive use of an herb garden. He's one of a selected group of herbalists who are receiving support from the Ethno-Veterinary Medicine Project. On this protected patch of land, he's planting a variety of native plants, including mahogany and oak trees and dawa-dawa.
These plant species are hard to find. There aren't any more of them nearby. That's why the project is helping us to both plant and protect them, so that when we need them, they'll be easily available.
Native plant gardens are an eco-friendly source of medicines for traditional practitioners like Timbia Gabambil. If this project catches on, Ghana could become a forerunner in ethno-veterinary medicine.
Fresh drinking water remains a luxury for many people. Worldwide, more than 2 billion people still don't have access to it. A simple device could help make a big difference.
Kids build up a real thirst while playing around, and pupils at the Zemazong Elementary School get to quench theirs with the supply of clean water, something that can't be taken for granted in Bagang, a village in the west of Cameroon. Since the end of 2023, the school has had its very own water purification device. The filter is really effective. The children have been drinking the water for a whole year, and I haven't seen as many cases of diarrhea. And when we collect the water, you can see right away how clear it is. Even the really dirty water comes out clear. The filter was made by Cameroon-based ACREST, the African Center for Renewable Energy and Sustainable Technology. It was adapted from a Canadian model. The idea is ingeniously simple. At the bottom of the container is a layer of fine gravel with sand scattered on top. After being poured in, the water is gradually purified as it seeps through the organic filters. The device's manufacturer also holds workshops in Bangang. The young people being trained here learn a variety of skills, including how to build the filters, including ceramic versions. Most of those are sold to private individuals due to their light weight.
Nous avons développé deux types de filtres. Le premier filtre étant le filtre biologique ou filtre à eau biosable.
We've developed two types of filters, the organic sand one and the ceramic filter. The second one is more recommended for families, while the organic one is advisable for schools and other public buildings, and in general for traditional gathering venues.
Des centres de santé, des chaufferies traditionnelles.
The NGO is supported by European organizations, enabling it to offer a wide range of training programs. It's also able to distribute water filters free of charge, around 100 to date. Normally, the filters don't come cheap.
Sur le plan financier,
the organic filter is slightly more expensive. The 20-litre model costs the equivalent of 75 euros, and the 40-litre the equivalent of 150 euros. The ceramic filter less than 25 euros, making it more affordable for farmers.
Ce qui fait qu'il est plus abordable pour le paysan.
There are water sources available in the region's mountains, but it's a long and arduous journey, not least for transporting water. So villagers tend to rely on local wells. Some parts of the country now have about 100 per square kilometer. City dwellers can get their water out of the tap, although the mains water supply is irregular, as Fanny Gemeya knows only too well. The dressmaker lives in the Cameroonian capital, Yaoundé, together with her 4 children. Here in the neighborhood, where we go days without the mains water, it usually takes us 2 hours to go to the well to fetch some water, which is very demanding. Water from wells is often not fit to drink. with a poor quality in many cases due to the boring technique, say conservationists. Drilling without meeting proper standards lead to chemical pollution. People don't realize that it can ruin their health. And that's where the filters can help out again, neutralizing impurities in the water. A prime example of its benefits being the school children out of the village of Bangang.
That's all for today. We'd love to hear what you think about the show, so feel free to contact us at eco@dw.com. For more inspiring stories, you can also search for EcoAfrica online. Thanks for watching. For now, it's goodbye from me, Chris Alems, in Lagos, Nigeria. See you next time. Bye-bye.